Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about killing the game biz dev scene. Now, indie game devs and studios often struggle with business development, missing out on everything from potential partners and significant growth opportunities. Whether it's due to fear, lack of time, or limited expertise, getting what you need is still obtainable and simpler than you may think. So today, we're going to reveal key strategies for tackling your biz dev needs and how to leverage one platform in particular to help generate leads with partners, grow your business, and even expand your studio's reach in this competitive industry. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Harry Phokou. Harry, how is it going, man? And thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been going pretty good. 37 degrees in Cyprus now, so nice and cold in my room with the AC on all day. That's pretty much me.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah, things are heated up here in the States. We're looking at, I think, a highs of like 80 degrees, and then there was some thunderstorms on the way. So hopefully this, conversation doesn't get interrupted by any strikes, but we'll see. We'll play it by ear. But enough about the weather. For those of you who don't know, Harry is the founder and CEO of Phokou Digital. Specifically, he's working to bring founders' offline reputation online, which, folks, this is all something I know we're in dire need of. And part of the reason why Harry is here, we're going to talk about things that relate to that and his and the work that he does and his expertise. But also, he is the podcast host of The Playbook. And, you've also worked at Evolution Recruitment Gaming, a recruitment provider. But first, please share a little bit more details about The Playbook and what that podcast focuses on.
Yeah, for sure. So at Evolution Recruitment Gaming, I was a podcast host. It was a way of us interacting with clients. And through doing that, I did over 180 interviews with gaming leaders. It was like every 2 weeks, loads of roundtables. And since I've been solo since April, I wanted to continue that. So I'll do a weekly podcast with a leader in the gaming industry. And if people know the Human-Led podcast, just like a long form where we dive into a certain topic, maybe similar to the podcast we're doing now, to be honest. And I'm just doing that for the games industry, focused on leadership. And I pretty much try to get a different type of topic each podcast.
Nice. Well, those are all great things to have, and especially leadership. I think it's something that we know we need to an extent, but don't necessarily know how it can be applicable in, different facets and different forms and things. It's not just within your business. So definitely, folks, if you're interested in trying to check out other podcasts like this, then The Playbook sounds like a great one. Now, you shared another interesting thing about you too. You just went solo recently, and you said back in April, at the time of this recording, we're talking about mid June here. So that's 2 months that you've been doing that. So I'm sure there's probably some stories you'll share to that relate to our conversation about that. But I would say that's pretty impressive going solo and from what I can tell from following your recent efforts, at least on LinkedIn, that looks like things are going great. So congrats on that front.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been going really good. So everyone listening, I was doing business development as a contractor for my old company, Evolution. I did that for 6 months, and I was only doing business development for the UK gaming market. And a lot of that was posted on LinkedIn, going to conferences, and doing podcasts. So basically stopped doing the day-to-day recruitment. I was only doing the BD side. And then after 6 months, I realized there was a need for kind of personal branding. Like I got told that on an e-coffee in February by Ada Figueroa, who works at King. She has been posting a lot. I interviewed her and she's like, you should charge for this. I was like, maybe I should. Went and put an offer together. And then I started asking people at the end of calls. Everyone was interested. I was like, all right, I'll bite the bullet. I didn't renew the contract. And then the start was trying to do employer branding. And then I realized with the current state of the market, people were like, this is amazing, but we're not really hiring right now, not a big need. So then I pivoted in week 2 to go after service providers, people who are either doing work for hire, people who sell stuff to gaming studios and publishers. And I started helping a few recruitment owners, like one-to-one, just giving them some advice on LinkedIn. And then I ended up becoming ghostwriting. So I have 4 founders I ghostwrite for now. One of them is a co-development company, which we'll probably focus more on today. And the other one is a strategic advisor. Another company, they sell an AI tool to game studios. And the other one owns a recruitment company. So ghostwrite means I just get their voice and I put it on LinkedIn. Like I rotate posts for them. I write all their content and we just make sure that LinkedIn is getting as much BD out of it as possible. So it's called founder-led marketing. So that's what I do day to day on top of the podcast and, posting on my personal LinkedIn.
So lots of stuff going on there, and we're definitely going to get into more on that in a moment. But before we do, considering how busy you are with all these things and stuff, I mean, what do you do in your free time? What are any hobbies, particular interests, anything you like to share that you do when you unplug?
Yeah, so bachata, big dancer. And funny enough, Everything I do makes me a bit more money. So that's a very good thing I try to do. So I did a post last week. So this would be, back in June for everyone listening. But in my bachata class, there was someone who runs a talent acquisition team in Limassol, like in iGaming. And they started following me on LinkedIn. And then they needed help with their LinkedIn. They invited me to the kind of studio. Long story short, we're now halfway through a boot camp where I'm teaching their whole HR team. So funny enough, I do bachata, really like it, the dancing. And as I love dancing so much, I try to bring that energy to the conferences. So I'm usually doing an after party somewhere, which again, more opportunity for business and introducing people. So yeah, I'm a party person with reason. I don't really drink that much, but I'm there to like bring people together, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's a great attitude about it. And one thing I can probably quickly summarize from that alone, and just a good lesson in itself is like, there's opportunities everywhere. And in your case, you're just talking about, hey, I like dancing, this style of dancing. And through that, I talked about it and look, and I think the key there is like, it's just a form of authenticity in a way. You're being authentic, you're true, but it's not like, oh, I'm only going to be talking about this in this more businessy space. No, it's just, hey, I'm authentic. It's true. There's so much going on there. And it just presents, again, like when we look at things this way, folks, it's everything could be looked at as an opportunity. And when you start doing that, it's like, I don't know, like Harry says, all of a sudden, in his case, at least it's, everything I do, it could potentially or has made me money. So we can't wait to get into some of those things further and how it relates to our conversation. But folks, and Harry, well, he may know. Before we do that, we have to get into the Q-Box round. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's just a series of a few random questions I prepared for Harry today. So Harry, are you ready for the Q-Box round?
Ready.
Awesome. What advice would you give to someone else that's just starting out? And I think this is super interesting because in a way you just started out. So with it being super fresh and having a very small window, what would the advice be?
So this is to me, myself?
No, to anybody listening out there in relation to the show or even beyond, anybody that's just starting out with their new endeavor or what they've been working on that might seem not new, but it is. What would you give? What would you suggest to those?
Had a lot of these conversations, and I think the biggest thing that people are missing out on is momentum. So a lot of people try to learn and then start doing, and then I speak to them. It's like, yeah, I'm going to start my business, but kind of want a website first. I'm like, so a website is what's holding you back 6 months. And most people, when they start their first business, broadly speaking, is a service business. Service businesses, you just need to take money and give a service. That usually doesn't require any upfront cost in terms of building a website. For example, I still don't have a website. If you go to Phokou.com, it just says not for sale with green, it's like horrible text. And my LinkedIn page is my landing page. Pretty much anyone, when you're starting out a new endeavor, you want to keep costs next to zero and just want to take money from someone and give them a lot of value for that. So yeah, my biggest tip is just to get that momentum. And that means by helping people, sometimes for free. So my first 2 clients, I did them in exchange for testimonial and feedback. I said, I will coach you for 4 weeks. We'll go for everything you need to do on LinkedIn. This is to help them post more, get the habit, and I'll do it in exchange for a testimonial and feedback. Then I use those case studies to actually sign my first client. It's a completely different conversation when you're talking to the first client by saying, yeah, this is how I helped this person from King, EBC. Even if they didn't pay you, the experience is a completely different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So good key one there. Focus on getting momentum. All right, next one. What's the one thing that most people don't know about you?
Alrighty. Most people don't know my real name isn't Harry. It's Haralambos, which is Greek. So I'm born and raised in Cyprus for everyone living at home. I'm based in Cyprus now. I was in UK for 7 years, hence the accent, which might be confusing. But yeah, Haralambos is my real name. Hara means joy. Lambo means glow. So my name's glowing from joy. So I try to use that as a pickup line, and I try to embody that a little bit. Spread some good vibes.
It's such a good one, though. It really is. And I mean, yeah, really living up to that. So I love it. All right. Last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
Hearthstone. Been playing since 2013. It's pretty much the only game I play because I like to see number go up and my collection get fuller. So if I'm going to start a new game, I always think I could make my collection look better on Hearthstone, and I can play it on the phone. So yeah, I can't really play new games anymore. I just go back to Hearthstone.
Love it. And that's a good one too in general anyway. So, and hey, if it keeps bringing you joy and loving that experience, that's all that matters. So love it. Awesome. Well, hey, Harry, thank you so much for, diving in, letting us learn a little bit more about you. But now let's get into the heart of this conversation here. And folks, as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be talking about killing the game biz dev scene. Because, let's face it, this is an area we often have a lot of challenge with, especially the idea of biz dev or business development, right? And I mean, to kind of like kick things off, Harry, I mean, could you talk about, the importance of business development for indie game studios and what successful business development might look like in this industry? Because I'm sure it's different for a lot of people.
Yes. So I think it's worth starting with a definition because people sometimes get scared. They think, sales, I don't like sales. So for me, business development is pretty much having conversations that could lead to partnership. And there's loads of ways to have those conversations. Some are more proactive, where you go and starting those conversations. And some are more proactive as well, in the sense like you could create content and they could come to you, whether you could have a website and people come to you. At the end of the day, business development is just having conversations. So I prepared a couple things as to why we need business development. The main thing is most people I speak to rely on referrals, which is great. If you're really good at what you do, you've done the hard part. Like you have a good service and people want to recommend you to other people. That's amazing. But if the market starts to shift, money starts to be a bit more hard to come by, you might stop getting referrals. And then if you've never done business development for 2 years, which has been the case for some people I speak to, you might be out of luck because you don't have the muscle of being rejected, quote unquote, 19 times to have like one conversation. Business development is just about starting those conversations. And if you don't have that muscle, you really are going to struggle when you end up having like no project to work on, for example. So the importance of business development, I can't understate it enough. Like you should always be doing some form of active business development. And we can get into more detail of like how, but like some examples are LinkedIn, Discord, gaming events in person, networking just with your current people and asking for recommendations. So yeah, the importance of business development, I can't really overstate it enough, especially for an indie game studio, because most people start, rightly so, as a work for hire studio, because you either going to have a full-time job and make a game on the side and then publish it in 5 years, or be work for hire, build the muscle as a team. And then once you have enough money coming in, you can spend a proportion of your time making a game, which then gets published. It's a lot more sustainable. And that's kind of like what we said before. You're not having to invest, and then gamble on winning. You have money, that's coming in, and using the extra time and resources to make a game, which might, 9 out of 10 games fail. So it might be the one that succeeds. So you need to be able to do business development to get those projects in. Otherwise, you're going to have to do the long way, which takes 5+ years if you want to make like a really good game.
Yeah. You know, the one thing I'll call out that you led in with, which I think is great, is just, and folks, I don't necessarily see this from the point of oversimplifying, because I think it provides a good mindset of just looking at business development as just having conversations. At any point in time, whether it's now, later, or down the road in the future, you're going to have a need for someone who provides porting, a publisher, a other type of service. I mean, there's any number of things that you will need assistance with and help with. And having those conversations now is going to put you in a better position. But again, those conversations, again, another word could be networking, whatever. But just as a whole, conversations are a great way to kind of get the ball rolling without even realize that it's rolling. It might not feel like it is, but it is, just organically, just by talking. And I love that, because again, it gets a little scary sometimes, or overwhelming, like, oh, business development. And we put this like big, I don't know, stigma or fear behind it, when the reality is just talk, like have conversations. And I get it. Sometimes that can be harder to implement than we would like to either admit or have time for, but making that push for those conversations is great. You know, and part of what you shared too, you were talking a little bit about platforms, and I want to kind of, I think it's a good segue into my next question that focuses a little bit in the area of, you know, just lead generation and business development, like exploring this idea and concept further. So you mentioned some. I'm curious, what channels and platforms do you find most efficient and sustainable for driving business opportunities compared to, let's say, some of the common defaults that devs and studios might rely on?
All right. So from my understanding, the defaults for some devs are the networks they already know. So like people they know, they ask around, try to get those referrals. And I see a lot of people using Discord a lot, where they join communities and try to get some work for hire projects there, which does work. Now, I'm, of course, biased. I'm the LinkedIn guy. That's the service I sell. I just see it time and time again. LinkedIn is the place to be. So I want to talk about LinkedIn a little here. So on LinkedIn, the reason it's so overpowered is, unlike any other platform, pretty much everyone's verified. On TikTok, you see maybe loads more views, loads more activity going on. On LinkedIn, you know, everyone is pretty much over 18, probably working, have some disposable income, and pretty much verified. You're not going to see, when's the last time you saw a duplicate account on LinkedIn? Like, it's not really there. They don't really survive. So with that in mind, and the fact that you can search for exactly who you want to connect to, and for free, connect with them. You can't do that on any other platform. You can't go on Instagram and search CEO of gaming studio in Europe and then find someone. It's not going to happen. So the fact that you can directly reach out to pretty much anyone and then have a chance of them seeing your message, super powerful. And the other part is you can post on LinkedIn. So I recently did a post where the title was like, you're more popular than you think. On LinkedIn, around 1% of people actually publish content a week. That's like at least once a week. So LinkedIn works with connections. So you have first connection, second connections, and third connection. First connection means you've both accepted a connection request. A second connection is someone has a first connection and you're connected to that person. So it's like 1 degree away. And the third is an extra degree away. What this means is if someone's connected to like 500, 1,000 people, they pretty much only see content with those 500,000 people most of the time. It's really prioritized. Unlike YouTube or Instagram, then like the content is really what drives whether it gets shown or not. On LinkedIn is very much like, oh, my network posted this. Let me show this to the rest of my network. So with this in mind, if you build a network, let's say my network, I have 6,680 followers, maybe like 4,500 connections. I've only pretty much accepted people who hire in games. So when I post content, and if 2,000, 4,000 people see it, most of them are people I want to see it. So it's not about the views on LinkedIn, it's about who's actually watching. And the fact that if they do like, if they do comment, if they view my profile, I can see that and I can start the conversation. Very hard to do that on Instagram. Or it is possible, but it's a different vibe. So the powerful part of LinkedIn is everyone's kind of verified. You can find exactly who you want to talk to, connect to them. And when you post content, you pretty much get seen by them. So you can very proactively build your own kind of network where you're posting content to them. I kind of use this analogy of you forcing them to sign up to a newsletter in a sense. Like if you just post good content and you connect to someone, even if you never speak to them, they're pretty much going to see your content like every other day. So LinkedIn's very powerful there because you can pretty much communicate to exactly who you want to talk to.
Yeah, no, I love that too, because I mean, if you look back to like some of the examples you provided, I'll throw some other ones too, like, Twitter. I know that's a big one a lot of us probably rely on for a lot of reasons. I mean, when, it's sometimes it's hard. It's basically a human characteristic, like a trigger in our brain when we're seeing like, oh, it's getting all these like, engagements, it's getting all these impressions, people are seeing things, but then the question becomes like, but who are the people that are seeing these things, as you pointed out? And each platform, I would say, has their advantage and what they offer. But when it comes to business development, and I mean, there's still some opportunities and strengths within these platforms too, I'm sure. But when it comes to business development, what you called out to and being basically hyper-focused, and we haven't, and we're not going to, unless you feel it's absolutely necessary. We haven't even talked about some of the other tools on the platform that they offer. I think there are services on LinkedIn, but still, everything you mentioned and everything else is free, the same as all these other platforms. But it's going to be a lot more hyper-focused in terms of, what the goal is, what the objective is with this. And geez, that number you shared, 1% post at least once a week. Like that's staggering. So when we're talking about folks that games that, let's say, discoverability, how about your own discoverability? If you know that the only 1% people do that one thing, which is 1%, one post a week, 1% do that, huge opportunity to get seen, to do everything else. Now, let's ask this though, because you dove in a lot with LinkedIn here, and I'm kind of curious too. Sure. It sounds like there's opportunity to stand out, to be seen and everything else. But how can people, use this? Developers, whether they're, indie devs or even studios, use this to actually generate leads and grow their business. Sure, they're getting all this attention, but it's like, how do you go about getting those leads then if they're just people picking up what you're putting down?
Alrighty, let's get into it. So LinkedIn, you could use it without ever posting content. I know people do, and build a massive business just by the fact that you can start conversations. So step one, when you do get attention, that needs to be optimized in the sense that when you do get that attention, you want them to make an action after they've viewed your profile, start a conversation, think of you as an expert, what have you. So number one, you want to optimize your profile. So just literally rapid fire, go through what you need to make sure that's done. If there's plenty of advice out there on this, but essentially the banner, it's free real estate. If you solve a problem, tell them. Don't make it like a journey to try figure out what you actually do. Headline, again, the headline, you could write game developer, sure, but kind of sell yourself a little. Like for me, it's helping CEOs sign gaming clients on LinkedIn. Anytime they see me in a comment, anytime they see me post, they see that tagline. So people aren't confused as what I do. In the past, I had podcast host, spreader of good vibes, and recruitment consultant. And you can imagine how many people said, what do you actually do? I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Like, how are you supposed to know what I do? So you want to just tell people exactly what you do, who you help. And then some kind of obvious stuff, like if you have a job experience, put your 3 bullet points of like what you've actually done, like make it very clear. So when someone comes to your profile, they see a smiling face that you've actually took some effort in. If you put effort into your profile, they're going to think you've put effort into other areas of your life. That's one thing I want to make clear. Like if you come up to a job interview and you're dressed in shambles, you might not get the job, even if you are perfect for the job, because you haven't put effort. Same thing with your profile. If your profile picture is weird, sunglasses, and you're not smiling, then why haven't you put effort into your profile? That's going to be the first thing people see. So you want to get that good first impression. But other than that, in terms of starting conversations, the best advice I've ever received is treat LinkedIn like you're in a pub. What do I mean by that? So LinkedIn is a networking platform. People are there to talk to other people, most to find a job. But after you find a job or two, it's pretty much the place where you keep in touch with all your professional contacts. So with this in mind, when you're in a conference, the worst thing someone can do is say, hey, I'm Harry. Let me tell you exactly what I do and what problem I solve. It's like, bro, I don't know who you are. You don't want to just message them with the essay of why you could help them. It's called a pitch slap. You're just like, why are you here? You just want to, it's like, Exactly. So in real life, you just want, like you would do in real life, you just compliment them. So this is how I start conversations. If you see someone in a conference like, hey, nice hat. My name's Harry. You start the conversation. You've now got permission to talk. You want them to just get a reply. So when I either send a connection request, you always compliment something about their profile that you find that, you know, they've either done a good job, that's just interesting. And then the job of the first message is to get a reply. Once they've replied, then you can start trying to pivot to a call. Again, we're all just trying to start conversations. Even on the call, I'm not trying to sell on the call. I'm trying to build a vibe, build a relationship, and then I figure out if I can help them. Then at the last 5-10 minutes, they usually start asking, what is it like to work with you? That's not because I've said at the very start of our conversation, hey, these are all the services I have. All I've done is just start a conversation, see if I can help them, maybe introduce them to someone, and then it naturally just becomes the flow of the conversation. So with that in mind, if we're just trying to start conversations on LinkedIn, we want to treat it like a pub, try to make friends, chat with people. So many people I've chatted to, which didn't need my help now, introduced me to someone who then became a client. So with that in mind, if we're just trying to optimize for conversations and good vibes, good things will then happen. If you're trying to start every conversation and think, I want to sign this person as a client, people will feel that energy. Not woo-woo, it's kind of, you feel it. Like you're not here for a genuine reason. So just with those two in mind, like just optimize the profile, make it look like you put effort into it, and then just try to start conversations. You mentioned everything on LinkedIn is free. 100 connection requests a week, free. Yes, they may be blank because they've done something recently where you can do less personalized. But even then, 100 connection requests a week, that's 400 a month. Most people accept around 20 to 30%. So you could add, I do this, I max out my connections every week. So I literally add 30 perfect ICPs to my connection list every week. That's 30 times 52. That's a lot. That's like 1,500. So 1,500 new people a year who are exactly who I need to talk to for free are now in my network, and I can directly message them. That's 30% of the people that I accept. So just doing that free thing every day, game changer. That will get you business. Yeah.
And when you're saying things like, maxing out your requests, I know LinkedIn has measures in place where you are throttled or limited on those connection requests that you make. And then here you can pay for our services, but still within that means, that's your request, but that's all. You also have inbound ones too coming in. So like you said, all those numbers and everything else, they add up and create lots of opportunities. Just to quickly recap on some of those things, what I love too is when you talked about the profile and optimizing that, it really sounds like it comes down to just clarity and the effort part, right? Showing that effort. And if we're not clear, and folks, I'm sure to some degree, that I'm a big proponent of this, but sometimes we're our own worst enemies. Because as Harry was saying this, I'm like, maybe I could be clear with my profile, especially what are you like? But how do you represent yourself? Really, is what it comes down to. And what are different ways to do that? Is your brand logo in that little banner spot? Is that more important than providing more clarity to people? Right. And then it might be a question of, hey, if it's an ego one, that's fine. It's your choice. But, what ultimately do you want at the end of the day? How do you represent yourself? And the other one too, you talk so much about value. And I think part of where we lose this connection or understanding of value is that a big portion of what you're talking about, how conversations happen, how business development works well, is there's value in meaningful relationships. So the salesy approach that we are probably all familiar with and get pitch slapped with, right? That is very cold. That's salesy. That's nothing anybody wants. How many times have you seen posts, especially on LinkedIn, where I hate it when random people just, but there is, instead of looking to show how you can provide value in the services or other things that you offer, do the thing that no one else is really doing, which is providing value in a relationship. And Harry, you gave some great examples, like asking questions, just like you do at a conference, like, hey, I love your hat. Hey, I love your Crocs. Hey, I love all these other things. Just real quick. And here's the other thing that's really cool about it. It's a human characteristic, and we all feel this way, okay? If someone else comes up to you and focuses the conversation or questions about you, what's the chance that you're likely going to engage and want to talk further? Because it's like, wow, someone's actually paying attention to me. So if you do that to someone else, that is definitely going to get you in their good graces. And then eventually what typically happens is, wow, this person has already invested so much in me, and it could just be a couple questions where now they're coming back and like, well, wait, I know they know so much about me, but what about them? Like, I want to hear them because this person's kind of cool because they're always asking questions about me. So I want to know more. And then there you go, right? Because it goes right back to what you're saying. And then now it becomes more of a conversation and anything else. So even if you're not necessarily getting business from that connection that you just made, like last week, Harry, you have someone else now referring this potential prospect that is now actually referring business to you just from a nice conversation that was focused on value and relationship building. It's just crazy, but because it sounds somewhat counterintuitive, but it's not, right?
Yeah, it's precisely that. Like the cold outreach, which is when you send someone a message who doesn't know you, and the pitch lap that comes with it. There's a reason people do that. It's because it's efficient. You get a list of people and you template a message and you go boom, 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 maybe 1% reply, and you close with one of them. Amazing. But the 99% that didn't reply, you've reduced your brand with those people. They now think, boo, this guy doesn't put effort, not trying to build a relationship. I'm not going to ever recommend this person. And you've literally done that in like 2 seconds. So it's negative brand building at scale. Please don't do that. So instead, that takes less effort. So if you wanted to do 100 conversations with the method that we're suggesting, which is try to start a manual conversation, that will take longer time. But the conversion will be much higher. And also, you probably sleep better at night knowing that you just made conversation. So it takes less time, but you don't need to start that many conversations. 5 to 10 a day, done. Everyone can start 5 DM conversations a day. It's more about the habit of doing it. Most people want to see everything like a sprint. Like, I just need to put this campaign on and then I'll get leads and then I'll stop. And then when I need it again, I will pull the lever again. But like, it's a lot more efficient to just do a little bit every day. Do that in half an hour, just like sending your connection request. Like a little hack here, it's free. You just go to My Network on LinkedIn and then scroll down. LinkedIn has a really good algorithm. It just suggests people to connect to. Sometimes I just do that. You just see like, oh, this people I probably need to talk to. And you just click, connect. Do 20 of those. Do that as a daily habit. It's 1,500 extra people a year, assuming that 30% accept. Could be even more. Yep. So like just that habit and then starting the conversation. Massive.
Yeah. You know, one thing I want to talk about too a little bit, we talked about conversations, but more within the context of, let's say direct messages and things like that, connecting, reaching out, you know, and starting that whole relationship, right? But conversations can happen in a different format too. And in particular, what I'm referring to is content, because that in itself could be a form of a conversation, even though it might be a little bit more passive or more involved because other people can, you know, chime in with comments and things like that. So with that said, like, what would you say, like, is the right type of content that, you know, indie studios or devs should be posting on places like LinkedIn to attract potential clients or even business partners?
Perfect. So I'm very much in this world now. That's what I'm trying to do with my content. All my content is trying to solve one job, which is eventually get people to want to use me for my help. Now, I could post every day, hey guys, I offer these services. And I might get one person a year. But there's a better way to do it where, bear with me here, you break it down into 3 types of content. You have attract content, nurture content, and convert content. Attract content is more of the personal story side. Things that are quite relatable to a broad member of LinkedIn, and you're showing yourself as a human. I always try to do in every post is to educate, edutain, I guess, like entertain and educate at the same time, or inspire someone with every post. But attract posts once a week, just being an actual human. And then nurture content is show you know your stuff. You can do this in a lot of ways. You can just give tips, always in the form of how I did something is better than how to. It's a very big bar to be able to say how to a lot of strangers on the internet. So if I'm you, and to get rid of that imposter syndrome as well, just say, this is how I did this game. These are the things I've learned. Hopefully that was useful. Those type of posts. That shows you know your stuff. If you have client testimonials, that's amazing. Anything that shows you know your stuff, that's nurture content. And then convert content is when you just directly ask people like, hey guys, we have 5 Unity developers available. They've done this, this, and this. They're available August 1st. Message me if you would like to have a conversation to see what it's like to work together. Those are like the convert posts. I usually do once of those a week, and they're more optimized if you combine that with like a case study. Like, here's the work we've done. So your clients can see your clients like through your content. They can like experience that vicariously through them. It's like, oh, I want to have that experience too. So those 3 types of content, you just rotate those. Like whenever you're in doubt, like, what do I post? It's like, all right, I could post a story, something inspirational. Like today, I posted about the fact that not every day is perfect. My brother, kicked me up the arse and made me go boxing. That post is doing well. And I got 3 messages, which has never happened. I'm not just saying that for the podcast, but 3 messages saying, wow, I'm following you for a while. And that is what led them to start messaging me and asking for advice. Even though the post itself never said anything about, hey, this is step-by-step what to do on LinkedIn. But I was just being a human. And when you're a human, people want to have a conversation. If you just look like Google and you're just giving tips all the time, it's not something that people want to actually start the conversation with. So I would rotate those 3 types of content: attract, nurture, and then convert.
I absolutely love that last story you just shared too, because it really does put things in perspective. How, this attract type of content is meaningful to people, because I think what it does too is, outside of just being relatable, and also authentic, it shows more. It shows a lot more without telling more about, I would say, people as a person. What are their values? What are these other things that are important and relatable to other people? And it's like, okay, you have awesome service and everything else, but let's say if we find out later through our networks or through the grapevine that, yeah, they provide a great service, but man, they're either difficult to work with, they don't communicate well, I don't get the best vibes. Like, those things are still valuable because, like we said, like we just talked about not too long ago, about the value of relationships. It's not just the value of the service, but it's also in the relationship. And we know this that from a studio culture perspective, right? Like those relationships, that value there, those are all important things, because if they're not in place, or if other things, it's the other extreme, like there's toxicity, like how like that can affect so much more than we realize. So a lot of this makes sense. But going back real quick, I mean, how you broke things down into that framework is great. Attract, nurture, and convert. And I think a lot of us sometimes fall in the trap of, oh, we just need to post more frequently and get our services out there. And we're all in the convert cycle, which is, it's just convert, posts and things going out there. But like that framework is so simple. It is just like attract. So be relatable and authentic, right? Because again, like we've discussed already, those things call out to value. And then nurture, like, show how you know your stuff. Don't be afraid to show what you're good at and everything. And by doing so, it's insightful. It can help others with their problems. And it doesn't matter if they're coming to you or not in that moment. What matters is, wow, not only is this someone cool that I like and I'm following, but now they're actually providing even more value in another way and format. And then going back down to that convert part, then now those other things, the attract and nurture, start to click. And when you get to the convert part, they're like, well, this person's cool. They were adding more value and an insight to me. And actually, even with that insight, it guided me a little bit further, but now I'm stuck. But hey, look, they have a solution that I know that they can help me with. And I can't think of a better person at this moment. And there you go. So love that framework. It's just such a good thing to follow. And again, because I think we overcomplicate things. So having that simple framework is really nice for people when they're, because we're overwhelmed. We're going to get stuck. So simple frameworks make that easy.
1,000%. It's the first thing that people talk to me is like the friction to posting. It's like, I don't know what to post. And then these are people who I've had on the podcast. They have so many stories, but it's that like, what do I post? And in my head, you want to have as many guardrails as possible. So for example, if you don't know what to post, just post advice that you wish you knew 12 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, and just do that ad infinitum. That's just nurture content. It will never hurt your brand. You're just giving value out there. And then naturally through that, you might tell a story that's for you might tell some advice with a story. That might be relatable. Then that will naturally do attract content. And then naturally, whenever you say, hey guys, I'm open for business, this is what I help with. And again, in that post, you're not out there with your credit card machine asking for them to pay. You're just asking them to have a conversation with you to find out more. That's another big thing about Convert. It's not like, guys, fill in this form and let's start business. It's more of like, just DM me and we can explore what it looks like. Because we always want to get the conversation from, let's say, a comment section to the DMs to a video call, ideally. And on the video call, that's when you can actually sell and like talk about all the features step by step. On the post, it's more just to get to that situation. I want to share one analogy because it's resonated a couple of days ago. It's about radio. So if you just treat LinkedIn like radio, yeah, I'm going to break this down very quickly. So like, what do you actually listen to when you're on the radio? They replay the greatest hits. So one thing to remember, not every post has to be this miracle page that you've written up and it's perfect and then it's going to be there and that's one post. Like we can reuse a lot of these posts that we do. For example, today's post was the same post, pretty much exact in January. I just changed it with my current routine. Resonate completely. Some with people that read the original one in January. Now that was 5 months ago, but to be honest, every 2-3 months, let's say you're posting 3 times a week. That's 12 posts a month. That means after 3 months, you can basically only need to make an original post maybe once, twice a week, because people need reminders more than they need lessons. It's not like they need to go and start learning new things and everything has to be told. Like you pretty much can only talk about so many things on LinkedIn if you have a service. So you can replay the greatest hits. That's what radios do. You'd be confused if you turn on the radio. It's like they're not playing the song Walter. It's like it's the best song ever. Every time I turn on the radio, that song. It's because it's good. Like if someone's on LinkedIn and they're scrolling, that's another thing to remember. It's not like YouTube. They're not searching for a solution. They're scrolling on LinkedIn. So they need to see great content. So if you have great content, reuse it. And another thing is you want to engage directly with people. If you post on LinkedIn and then put the phone away and then come back tomorrow, that's one of the worst things you can do from an algorithm perspective. On LinkedIn, the engagement is one of the biggest measures as to whether the post is quality and will be recommended to other people. So if someone's commenting on your post and you're not starting the conversation and replying to them, LinkedIn is going to think, this post does not promote conversation. We will recommend it less because there's another post over here, which is getting loads of conversation, loads of people spending more time on LinkedIn. Let's recommend that post. So you kind of want your post to start a conversation. A very practical thing to do is try to have a PS statement at the end of a post. And you ask a simple yes or no question that's related to the post to start conversations, because then that's going to trigger people to start engage. He shares the post more. And also, some of the times they ask a question that you can help them with. And then the people can see in public that you're helping them. What an amazing thing. And then the third thing about radio is they play music, not ads, for 80% of the time. So if you're playing ads 24/7, people are either going to unfollow or not spend time on your post. And then LinkedIn's going to say, the dwell time of this post is quite low. The amount of time someone's spending looking at it, let's stop recommending it. That's another thing to remember. So you want to be given value for at least 80% of the time. So let's say 2 out of the post a week given to the audience. But the third one, that's when you can ask for help or ask for someone to use your service. But even then, you still try to give value in that post. Try to give one insight. So yeah, you always want to lead with value.
I absolutely love these content ideas here. And I mean, just to add a couple more things to some of those. So the radio post, well, one, I was like nodding as you were talking about it because I saw that resonated with me and I'm like, such a great point. But the point in what you're making was, hey, I made that post before and I repurposed it. And here's the thing that I was thinking, and when you were talking about that was, I try to read as much as I can, and I read more like self-help or nonfiction than I do fiction. But what I've realized in time is what I read 2 years ago, if I go back and read that again, I'm in a different position. I'm in a different place on my journey. And now things that I saw back then are much different. Now I'm seeing them in a different light and I'm able to apply them in different ways. So repurposing isn't as much as a concept of, hey, let's do this to scale things, which yes, it can. But then if you look at it from the perspective of, hey, maybe people forgot. Hey, maybe people didn't see it. Because we always think, if we repurpose, that means people's going to see it again. They'll get tired of it. Well, not if you do so with maybe a little bit thought in there, but also sometimes, like you've said, people have read it and then they read it again and maybe they got something different out of that post. Maybe they're applying it different because they're in a different mindset, a different place on their journey. There's any number of things where now that one post is getting more value and it's scaling. So if that's not efficient, I don't know what is, right? So just so many great things happening there. And then with the engagement part, yes, there's following up with engagement. I know it works very similar to Reddit in a way, but I think there's less of a algorithm aspect in Reddit than there would be in LinkedIn in this case. But still, these points remain the same for both, which is if you're always commenting, in a way, you're showing value. You're contributing to those conversations. You're adding value by doing so, especially if people are asking questions or follow-ups and things like that. So outside of any algo boost that you may get from that activity, which again, that will help scale things, obviously, but now you're validating you as a person, as someone who cares, being authentic, all these other things that are going on. And then if people see a post and there's, oh, look, there's over 400 comments. I might want to be part of this conversation, or, and that's typically the types of things that can start happening too, just from that. So there's so many other things going on here, even beyond from what's Harry's saying. And unfortunately, we're, can only discuss so much, but these is the type of amplification and value and other things that are coming out of just these types of efforts. So, as we talk about efforts, I know that from our conversation so far, there may be people listening that are like, well, I am a studio, I'm a dev. We don't necessarily do things, work for hire. Maybe we've considered it because we want to open up other possible like revenue channels or things because, publishing landscape is difficult, especially from a funding perspective, even with investors, all these things. And crowdfunding, great, but it's a lot of work. So I want to kind of dive in a little bit with like growth opportunities and such, and where those potentially could lie with this idea of, hey, how else can we be sustainable? So let's say beyond game development, what would you say are some key growth opportunities that indie game studios, should consider to diversify their revenue streams and enhance their business stability?
Alrighty. So what my mind goes to is I used to do contract recruitment, and specifically for Unity, so that's mobile games. And I became top biller. And a lot of those placements, these are individual consultants into mobile gaming studios, were with hiring managers who didn't really consider contractors before because they felt it was a bit of a hassle. Now, we did placements. The hourly rate is quite high in contract game dev. So it's unfortunate, but my answer is literally trying to become work for hire. I don't know. I just feel like it's the best solution. Like if you have resources available and you have more time, you want to it does two things. You start learning, so you're getting paid to learn. Awesome. And then you get things to talk about, like testimonials, and you get experience from other studios. So like beyond game development, if you're an indie studio and you want to make money, like you could look into, I don't know, you could do a course, but in my opinion, like the most efficient thing to do is to get active income, which is contract work. How to get contract work? It's kind of similar to what we've been saying. You just need to have more conversations and be the solution before they start posting jobs. So most of my placements happened because I was talking to the hiring manager for 6 months. And then when he thought, I need another senior Unity developer, rather than go to the recruitment team and start hiring for 3 months, he's like, I know Harry. He said he's got like 3 available. Let me ask him. So you want to be that person. And that doesn't mean you need to take him out for dinner. That's not the sort of relationship. You can literally just have a conversation on LinkedIn, maybe one video call, and then you're going to be in the back of his mind, and you're going to be in like the first kind of point of action when someone needs to find a solution to something. You can be like, I remember Mark. Mark is a good Unity developer. Let me ask him if he's available. So to do that, again, just want to have more conversations. If you're a indie studio, I would look to have conversations with agency recruitment, kind of a niche solution, but I've placed people from indie studios, individual contributors, into other studios. So the indie studio were renting out the very good Unity developer at a really good rate because they just happen to be there. So then the indie studio can kind of get someone to do work for like 6 months at a time, get some cash in, and experience. So the only way I knew of the indie developer is because they reached out to me on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll have the chat. And then they said, oh, here are the people we have available. They're available in 3 months. And I said, cool, I'll keep it in mind. Now, I'm a Unity agency recruiter. My job is to speak to hiring managers in Unity all day, every day. It's a lot more hours I'm putting into that than you are. So I would leverage this. Yes, they probably take 10, 20% commission, but these are more options that you can say yes or no to. So I would try reach out to recruiters as well as the game studios themselves.
I absolutely love this because it's just like, again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about, hey, just having these connections in place. And it doesn't necessarily mean that business needs to come out of it, but if you're always the person who can provide help, value, and assistance in any other way, shape, or form, and if that's one by just making an introduction, connecting someone to someone else that they need, you're going to be top of mind, whether it's for something similar to that or other, or just be like, hey, again, hey, this is someone I was talking to. They're a great guy. I understand you're looking for this. You should reach out to them because they helped me quite a bit in this in a different capacity, but I know that they do this and you're looking for that. So why don't we connect, right? All those types of things, can really help in terms of looking at, further growing things. Now, with that said, I mean, you talked a lot about, or to an extent about, focusing on expertise. Hey, we have a great dev team, great in Unity, great, we could leverage that. But like, what would you say are some other things? And should people just play to their strengths, or are there other areas, or can they leverage their expertise in another way, such as maybe entering consulting space? And should they? Because let's face it, recently, especially I think with the past like year or so, or even beyond, we've been seeing a lot of consultants pop up. So like, are there other ways to leverage their expertise? And maybe let's talk about consulting, because I know that's something that you've actually done recently and might have a little bit more insight in how that could be another growth opportunity, or anything else that comes to mind.
Yeah, of course. So one of my clients is exactly that. They are a consultant to founders and gaming studios. I am technically a consultant if you pay me per hour for advice. So to me, this is kind of like an ascension model. Like step one of getting paid for your time is just getting paid for an hour for advice. And then the upgrade is like, oh, we want you for a certain amount of time every week, 20 hours, 40 hours a week, pretty much a contracted employee at that point, but you're still a contractor. And the power of being a contractor is you're paid per hour usually, and it's usually a lot higher than an employee because there's a lot less security for you, but that means they can afford to pay you more because of that. And the fact that there's usually a lower notice period, they don't have to do a golden handshake if they're in the Nordics. Like having an employee is a big expense. So if they can contract you for that, it's a big deal for them. Now, to become a consultant, what I found when I speak to the consultants, they always say the main way they get their clients is referrals. So people who've worked with them before, and conferences, like meeting someone face to face. Now, this kind of may be going against what I've said with LinkedIn, but in my opinion, you want to use everything that you can. So if you have the ability to go to a conference, go to a conference, because they're people, literally buyers and sellers. The only reason they're there are to talk to each other. So if you're there making content about it, even if you don't close someone on the day, but being face to face, then you can start beginning the referrals when it comes to consulting. And anything I'd recommend at the start, go cheap or do it for testimonials. If you don't have any, if you have no experience given a consultant, in my opinion, you give free advice on e-coffees and then see if people actually want to get on the phone for the free advice. If they don't want to get on the phone for the free advice, then we need to either elevate our position or maybe learn more. But if you start getting booking up, for example, it's like, bro, I have no time, I can't give all this free advice, then you can start charging. And then you go up from there. You can just charge a bit more every time. So the going rate for like an hour of time usually starts at around 100 euros and you can go up to like 300. So that's very high leverage stuff. And then to get repeat work, that can often happen after having that 1 power hour. So one of my clients booked 1 hour just to get advice. And then there's like, oh, actually, I want more long-term help. Amazing. And then we got a retained solution. So at the end of the day, you're just giving value and you're charging for it. There's loads of ways to do it. If you want to do one where it's less like, oh, let me hire myself out 40 hours a week, then consulting is a way to do it. And what I found, if you've never done it before, it's going to be difficult to do that just from scratch. So I'd recommend going with the people that you know, asking who needs that sort of help, or going to a conference. I want to share one thing actually. I got my list of leads here. I did a post recently, and I want to highlight how I've got the lead is someone who's interested in what I'm looking for. So I have a bit of a harder definition for lead. Some people consider a lead just anyone who you have their contact details. So I guess this is an engaged lead, someone who I've started a conversation with. So I have 26 here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 came from inbound. So they reached out to me from my content. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 were from a conference. And to be fair, these are all the people that said yes. So I have others that said no. And then I have 1 from a podcast, 1 from an audio event, and then 2 from warm outreach. And so what I'm trying to highlight here is it's a bit of a mix. If I only posted on LinkedIn, I would have like half the signed clients. If I only went to conferences, I'd have half the signed clients. And these all don't take that much time. Like going to a conference is a 2-day event. It's like counts for like 40% of my clients right now. And when it comes to inbound content, that's a post on LinkedIn every day for me. But regular consistency doesn't have to be once a day. 3 times a week is like amazing compared to the average. So I will just try to do all these little things to start those conversations. And then someone someday will be like, whoa, I need more help on this. Can you help me? Sure, that'll be €100. Nice. We've made our first sale, and then we have momentum.
You know, I love that you share that too, because I did remember seeing that post too. And I thought it was interesting because, again, we might look at a post like that could be, oh, it's more of I'm talking about myself and stuff. But think about what is also that post doing? That's sharing. It's being authentic, sharing the process. It's nothing about it. If folks follow Harry on LinkedIn and read it, I would say from my perspective, there's nothing that's calling out to, hey, look at me, look at what I did. It was more about addressing things in this way that relate to how can you provide value, how and why are these people coming in, and identifying the source and the reason, like you just called out now. It helps people. Again, it's more insightful, more value. So that in itself is kind of interesting. And going real quick back about like the expertise. I mean, you had some really good solutions, and you shared this one in particular before. Like if anybody else is looking for growth opportunities and looking to become a little bit more sustainable and support themselves without having to go through whatever other means that are potential but very hard or challenging to execute, like the free advice one. Get people on board with that. And again, it's like, because I know that's a problem a lot of people have. Well, how do I do this? What do I start? Like, there's always going to be that self-critic. But if you go out there, and this is one thing I like to do, and I think this is something you probably do too, is if you're in this space, providing a free value, right? Like, so I believe like as consultants, you and I probably have some type of like, hey, free consultation or reach out and we'll give you some time just to discuss your needs, right? One of the things I like to do at the end of a call is first is ask people, like set an expectation. And then at the very end, ask, and let's say the expectation is, I'm looking for, my goal here is to provide you in value in some way, shape, or form from our conversation. And then at the end, I go back and say, did I do that? And I through that alone, I mean, and everybody can have a different approach, but through that alone, I've had even compliments of people, wow, you actually went back to that. Like they called out to it because no one else like calls out to those things and stuff. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is when it comes to the free advice and everything, it goes right back to what you're saying too. How do you represent yourself? How do you be authentic? How these are all things and ways to, how are you showing the effort? These are all things that can help really make things clear and also help you stand out when you're doing these things. So even if, and then there's like, even if you have those positions where you feel that, you know, you have the expertise, but you feel like you don't because this is something new or different, just start having those conversations, start providing that free advice and go in with effort and everything else. Because if you're doing like these little things that we're talking about, you're more likely to then further validate yourself It's in a way can help build up like things like affirmations. Like, I know this is true. It's not just me telling me myself that I'm capable of this, but because I had that awesome conversation with that person and they said, wow, thank you so much for that help. And that's just going to further validate. So if you're looking for those other opportunities, whether it's consulting, whether it's other type of work, just continue to bring and show that value and it should be good.
Just want to highlight one thing there, like free advice doesn't mean you don't treat them as if they're paying you. So treat them like a paid client.
Yes.
1,000%. Give them everything you would if someone paid you the full price. But you can just set the expectation at the start. We're doing this only if you're going to be committed to it. Let's say if it's a multiple day thing and you're going to give me feedback. And if you like it, a testimonial.
Yep.
Make sure that's the expectations.
Awesome stuff. Well, there were so many things here that we discussed, and unfortunately, we can't talk more because we're at time. But before we close, Harry, what are some 3 suggestions, tips, advice that you could give us today, whether it's a summarization of some of the things that you shared and just to recap or anything else? What are those so people can take action from our conversation today?
Cool. I want to share a stat. I had 86 conversations at the time that I planned this. And that got me my 4 retained clients and my 6 one-off clients. And I'm now making 3 times what I used to make before in 2 months. I just want to reiterate that. There was 86 conversations. So in 2 months, I had about 2 conversations a day with different people. And that's led to this business. Some of those were e-copies that led nowhere. Some were sales calls where they said yes and gave me thousands of pounds in 20 minutes. Some were calls where they recommended someone and that person became a client. Long story short, like we said at the start, have more conversations. That is number 1. Number 2, momentum is everything. The reason it looks like I'm having a good time and I'm very, very busy and loads of activities because this is my season of like hustling. Like I'm working a lot. Like I'm not working 40 hours like I used to. It's probably more 60, 80 hours. But everything is exponential really. So if you're going to do the BD, I would do it with a bit of fire. Like don't half-ass it because the harder you do it, it starts to compound. Like if you do 5 times the effort, you might get like 50 times the results. So if you are going to do this, like I would recommend to do all the different methods, LinkedIn, conference. And this doesn't need to take all the hours that I'm talking about, at least commit to it and keep doing it. That would be the momentum piece. And the other thing is, the reason I've got to this stage is because I've paid down my ignorance debt. Learned this from Alex Hormozy. It's basically, if you don't know you don't know what you don't know. So I've paid for coaches to teach me this. So if you feel like you need expertise in business development, if you need expertise in game design, like you need to fill in some gaps, hey, this is the biggest return on investment of all time because they might teach you something which gives you the ability to make hundreds of thousands of pounds, but that might have cost you £100 per hour. So I always recommend that. I do a lot of introductions. I do a lot of cohort. I join a lot of cohort style coaching. So I'm even joining one for podcasts, which I've revamped my whole podcast strategy. The relative cost for that, for the benefit is crazy. So yeah, if it ever feels like you want to learn more about something, the online education space on LinkedIn, I think is really underrated. Like just paying for advice because then you're like, oh, now I know this skill forever. Amazing. So those 3 things.
Yeah. And that last point is great. And plus it goes back to, if you think about it, you're investing in yourself for that. That's because like you said, you don't know what you don't know, and paying down that ignorance debt is basically investing in yourself. And you can't think of it. I mean, it's
no
only
one can
going to
take
pay
it away
itself.
from you.
Yeah.
No one can take it away from you. It's not taxed ever. And it stays with you forever. And the more you do it, the more it's worth. Because if you are a one-stop shop solution, you can charge 5 times than the individual solutions. So for example, if I'm just a ghostwriter for content, I could charge, let's say the going rate, 1,500 a month, let's say. But if I can also do the outreach, represent them at a conference, I also do their whole BD strategy. I teach their whole BD team. You can imagine how being a one-stop shop for all of that, you can charge 3 times, 4 times as much. So having more skills in your domain is like, the more you do it, the more valuable it gets. So yeah, it's underrated.
So good. All right. Well, before we ask you to drop some links so people can reach out, connect, and get in touch with you, you do have kind of an offer for our listeners today. So what is that if people want to take advantage of it?
Cool. So kind of what we mentioned before, like that clarity call, I usually go all out on my clarity calls. I just give you all the advice that I wish you knew. And so that is available. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, we'll book a call. I'll give you as much advice as I can. So if you are looking to learn more about this, happy to have a one-to-one chat. That's the offer.
Awesome. So folks, if you're stuck somewhere, or if what we discussed today is something you want to dial yourself into a little bit more, reach out to Harry. And I'm assuming here that LinkedIn is going to be your profile of your channel of choice.
Yeah. The only 2 links I'm dropping is LinkedIn. And if you like this type of, or if you would want to know more about, if you have another podcast, like your second favorite to the indie game movement, then you can, the playbook with Harry Phokou. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile and scroll down, it's there. Weekly episode. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Phokou, which is spelled Phokou, or just write Harry Phokou. There's no other person on earth that is called that, so it won't be hard to find.
Awesome. Harry, really can't thank you enough for everything today, this insight and this discussion. It's definitely been insightful. So appreciate you sharing everything that you have with our listeners today.
No, and thank you for being a great host. I really enjoyed this.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.